All right, here we are, Chapter 16, India and the Indian Ocean Trade Basin, and we are looking at the production and trade in the Indian Ocean Basin, which is heading 2. As far as the College Board is concerned, what they will be concentrating on in May is that the improved commercial practices are going to lead to an increased volume of trade and expanding the geographic range of existing trade routes, including the Silk Roads, which is going to promote the growth of powerful new trade cities. And you can't talk about trade in South Asia without talking about the monsoon winds. So if you had Ancient World last year, you already know about these. So geographically, what happens is that there is a series of winds which occur in South Asia every year. And so in the spring and summer, we have these rains come, these heavy rains come from the southwest up. And as they do that, the winds are powerful and seem to go up into the Himalayan mountains. And then later on in the year, during the fall winter, these winds start to turn around and start going back the other direction. So they go from the southwest in the spring as warm, and then they come down from the mountains in the fall and winter dry. And so that's going to lead to a lot of different things. It's going to really control when you are leaving and going to India, because those winds are going to be either a great aid to your journey or make it more difficult if you're going by sea. It also allows you to kind of know what to expect if you're from an agricultural standpoint. So you can expect those rains in the spring and summer. And so over hundreds of years, what's going to happen is that throughout India, we're going to have these seasonal irrigation flows that they're going to figure out to help avoid either droughts, which can lead to famines. This is especially important in the southern part of India. This also is going to, with this huge influx of rain, it's going to be important to create reservoirs, canals, tunnels to make sure that you can keep things under control and you can keep your food supply going. So in India, what we'll notice is that we're going to have some nice, steady, incremental growth happening throughout this time period. So from 6 to 800, you can see a nice little jump of about 10 million. 800 to 1000 CE, we see about 20 million growth. And then from 1000 to 1500, we see about 80 to a little over 100 million people. So we see nice and steady growth, but we don't see the exponential growth that we see in China during this time period. Okay, so moving on to the actual trade itself, like I mentioned before, the monsoon winds are going to be very important for the western side of India. So again, from April to September, it's very easy to sail towards India from Africa. And in November to February, it's good to sail away. So this is going to create, a seasonal movement, basically. And so we know that if I'm trying to get to India, I've got to leave at a certain time. If I want to leave India and get back to Africa, it will be much easier if I do that during the appropriate monsoon season. We also start to set up basically hemispheric trade here in the Indian Ocean Trade Basin. You've probably heard of the Silk Roads before, which basically go from here all the way to China over land. These waterways, this Indian Ocean Trade Basin, is also going to be an important part of the Silk Road. So what will happen here is we will have Africa will be known for many things, including gold. India will be a prime spot to get cotton, very important fabric. Southeast Asia will be a good place to get spices, and China, of course, is a strong place to get silk or porcelain. There's other things that each side is known for, and everyone kind of brings something to a table, but that's the benefit of having stable trade, is everyone gets more because you focus on what you're best at creating. And so what's interesting is when it comes to southern India, a lot of the Indian regional economies are going to be largely self-sufficient. They won't necessarily won't need a ton of outside trade. Certain products that are going to be there that are going to be traded amongst themselves include iron, copper, salt, and pepper. What's going to happen is that southern India as well is going to profit from the political instability in the north, which Ms. Hadi should have covered I'm sure she covered in the first heading. So South India is going to be able to take advantage of the trade that's happening, even if they themselves are largely self-sufficient. One of the things that makes this easier to have increases in trade is going to be several changes. We're going to have larger ships built during the post-classical time era than came before. So the origins of these ships, you could look in the past, but they're really going to get bigger and larger. So the first ones are called dhows, which look like this, which is one way that a dhow can look. And then this is an example of a junk. A junk so dhows are going to be associated mainly with Indian Ocean trade and Arabs. The junks are going to be primarily associated with the Chinese, and both are going to be able to hold a lot more goods than were able to be held and transported before. We're also going to have, with the peace and with the trade, we're going to have improved organization of agricultural efforts to maximize profits and also to be able to take care of the people and see that population growth that we saw earlier. We're also, as I mentioned before, going to see the establishment of emporia. Now, what emporia is you might have heard of like an emporium, which is basically a place where you can get a lot of things from around the world. And so what happens is these trade cities, which we could see on that previous map, are often going to serve as basically warehouses for trade for things from all over. So a cosmopolitan city means we have people from all over the world living there. And as you can see with the monsoon winds, people are going to stay in places for longer periods of time than you would necessarily expect a merchant to stay. And as I mentioned before, specialized products are going to be developed all throughout this hemisphere so they can make more money and more profits through trade. So hydrocarbon steel is going to become important. But again, the big one is going to be cotton. Cotton is a very breathable fabric that can be warm, but also breathable. It's what we still wear a lot of around the world. So not as luxurious as silk or as nice as silk, but still a very good textile to use. The other thing we're going to notice is when it comes to this building of these trade cities, is a good case study here is the Kingdom of Axum, which you'll notice is all the way over here in the Horn of Africa. Okay, so what's going to be interesting is that the Axum are going to displace the Kush, who were the people who controlled this area. And from there, what they're able to do is they're able to grow their economy and in a great city by the amount of trade that they're able to do by being on this western end of the Indian Ocean trade basin. One of the unique things about Axum as well is that it adopts Christianity fairly early, and there's other stories about that. But this does a good job also showing you how the different areas have different things that they're producing. Okay, in good trade, everybody wins. Everyone makes what they're good at, and then they trade with the other people, and so everyone gets some of the best stuff. This also is going to allow the Kingdom of Axum to get much bigger than other sub-Saharan African empires or cities, which we'll talk about later on. The other thing that's interesting to note about this time is I believe in heading 3, Ms. Hadi I'm sure she'll do a great job of talking about more of the cultural and religious aspects here, but it's important to note that the temples are going to become more than just religious centers during this time. They're going to be a place where things can be organized, so they'll be in the center of coordination of irrigation, other agricultural work. Some of the temples themselves are going to have large land holdings. Also, we'll notice that the religion is where we see a lot of education being provided. Again, we're not at the point where everyone's getting educated, but it is starting to, it's where people can get educated. And then we're also going to see some temples work into banking services, which does make sense. You'd want to be able to trust, whoever is handling the money and the transactions. The other thing that's going to be interesting is we're going to see a lot of kind of changes to our challenges to the different castes and societies with this extra trade, with all this movement around. We're going to definitely see some migrations that are going to end up happening as people move to different areas and as that's possible and as people can trade. We're also going to see the growth of Islam as merchants are going to bring that religion with them, and then people are going to start to convert. We'll talk more about that in the 4th heading. We also are going to see urbanization, like I mentioned, that's those big trade cities, which the College Board told you to look out for. And we're also going to see some changes to the caste system, which again, Miss Hadi will cover in more detail. But uh, we're going to basically in India, people believe that they're born into castes at this point, where you're basically born into a place in society and you need to serve that, no matter how you feel about that. And these castes, originally there's only going to be 4 or 5 of them actually. And what will happen is that some of these castes will create jati or subcastes, and they're going to work very similar to workers' guilds. So people will work in the same professions that their families work in, and these jatis will also kind of serve as support for everyone within that caste. So the worst thing that you can do, it translates into our language today. One of the worst things that can happen to you is you're going to become outcast. You can be taken away from your caste. And so we see as trade happens, we see a lot of these jati or subcastes being created, and which will cause some issues later on. The caste system also, interestingly, does expand from the north to the south at this point. The increase in communication and trade within the subcontinent actually is going to migrate some of these ideas there, which will be promoted again by temples and the education system. And with that, that is heading number 2.